Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on our Cyber Essentials Plus. I'm going to kick it off and wait for the rest of the attendees can join us later on. So a quick introduction for myself. I'm Bernhardt. I'm the Head of Governance and Compliance for CTS. And with me today is Clive Madders, who's the CTO for Tec Security, our Cyber Essentials Plus partner. We'll talk with you today around the kind of things we're seeing at the moment and give you some guidance on what the best practices are and what Cyber Essentials is all about, really. Next slide, please, Jared. So the overview today is where we are in the state of the industry, what we're seeing as a trend in the legal sector. A brief introduction to Cyber Essentials, where I'll pass over to Clive, who is the font of all knowledge when it comes to the Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. We'll discuss the needs and process, and we have a Q&A session at the end. So feel free to ask any questions or pop questions into the chat if you've got anything in particular you want to talk about. All right. Next slide, please, John. So, cyber attack warnings. This has come through from the Bar Council last year, and it's an ongoing threat. We are being targeted actively. The legal sector has been targeted for the last 12 months. We've seen an increase of almost 60% on these targeted attacks, specifically around emails and attachments coming into the environment. It's an ongoing trend. It's not going to go away, and I think it's going to get worse over time. These breaches and ransomware and malware attacks have caused endless amounts of headaches for individuals within the legal sector. It causes problems for those sets and for individual solicitors and barristers. So we want you to be aware of these threats, and the best way to do that is by having processes and controls in place. We have to do the basics right. And what are the basics? The basics are the Cyber Essentials. Next slide, please, Jared. Cyber Essentials Plus is the key part of it. It's a nice framework that's been designed specifically for organizations to ensure that the threats that we're seeing day to day are actively being managed by putting controls in place, putting measures to manage and ensure that your environment is safe. And this is why we've partnered with Cybertech on Cyber Essentials Plus to try and roll this out across all of our organizations, to all of our clients, because we want you to be as secure as possible. It's easier for us to manage your environment and look after you when we've got these controls in place. So I'm going to pass over to Clive. He's going to discuss the two levels of Cyber Essentials. We've got Basic and Plus, and why we think you should have Plus. So Clive, over to you.
Lovely, thank you. Well, as we say there, the standard was designed to raise the security or cyber security levels of everybody in the UK. Really, it's a great standard for that. We start off with a basic standard, which is a self-assessment, where you review your own policies, practices, and controls that are in place. That's a fairly straightforward process, and it allows you to kind of think about the things that you should have live and active within inside your infrastructure and within inside your organization. That's a very basic level, though, and we then move into the Plus standard. What the Plus standard delivers for us is an externally verified self-assessment in effect. So we're looking at what you said in your self-assessment and confirming it's in place. Also carrying out some additional tests, which are very good to have, such as a vulnerability assessment to understand if there are any unknown vulnerabilities within inside the environment that we're looking at. Externally as well. So we do look at any vulnerabilities that are being exposed externally that an attacker could see and use against your organization, whether your firewalls are correctly configured and all those kind of things. So the beauty of the Plus is that it's a real good quality stamp on the self-assessment, understanding that you have actually got those things in place and they're already working correctly and increasing your cyber security and reducing those most common attack vectors that we see being used. Lovely. I think we'll move to the next slide. I think this is you, Ian.
Microphone issues. So there's three key needs that we've identified within the sector, and what we want you to be aware of is that the need number one is to ensure that your data is secured. Process and controls will make sure your data is secured on an ongoing basis, especially when you're sharing information outside of your organization and when receiving information from another organization. We need to make sure you've understood the risks to that data, how you manage and control that data within your environment. The second part, which we've seen a massive spike in, is it provides assurance to your clients and to your customers and insurers. We've seen loads of sets asking for help with security questionnaires and some form of verification of what controls they've got in place. This standard gives you that assurance. And the other thing to be aware of is that insurers are now asking for the Cyber Essentials Plus certification to give you the cybersecurity insurance that you need in your organization. We've seen a couple of organizations now who've actually lost their insurance by not having the standard in place because they don't meet the requirement. And as an insurer, they don't want to take the risk on you and your organization if you don't have some controls in place. The other part is to maintain security. And that by doing so and doing the Cyber Essentials Plus, you maintain the security as an ongoing requirement. It's not a one-off, it's an ongoing piece. You recertify every year. And to ensure you maintain the security of your data, we encourage you to always do your Cyber Essentials certification every year to renew that, provide assurance to your clients and provide assurance to your insurers going forward. Next slide, please, Jared. I believe this is you, Clive.
Absolutely. So the first thing we look at with the Cyber Essentials is defining the scope. We need to understand what you've got, how it's used, how it's configured, and how it's set up. And there's some very basic bits and pieces to make sure you're safe and secure. Those are all covered inside the self-assessment questionnaire. After we've done the self-assessment questionnaire, we look to undergo a vulnerability and compliance assessment. And that's where we as an external assessor will make sure that the things that you said in step 1 are actually in place, well defined and maturing, so they're actually being delivered correctly. We will complete the vulnerability assessment to see if we can find any other issues, and we'll check that you do comply with the standard that is set out by the NCSC. Finally, as we say, these should be renewed annually. Things change in the IT world all the time. Threats mature, move on. More threats become kind of standard use by attackers. So gradually over the course of the year, the standard is continually reviewed and updates to that standard are released to make sure that everybody is continuing to raise the standard of their cybersecurity. So on an annual basis, we should redo our self-assessment questionnaire and definitely redo the plus. As we said earlier, we're seeing actually now with insurance premiums going up, lots of the insurers are now requiring Cyber Essentials Plus, or actually, as I saw only a week or so ago, working with a client refusing to insure them without Cyber Essentials in place because it's such a good standard to work by. Lovely. So the key things with Cyber Essentials is once you start the process, you sign up to the self-assessment solution. We can help you with that. So we help you fill it in and make sure it's all correct. But you have to complete that part of the assessment within 6 months of starting the process. Should be fairly straightforward, that piece. The key time driver actually is the Cyber Essentials Plus. And that has to be completed within 90 days of completing that self-assessment. Excuse me. And the reason for that is, again, lots of things change, especially with your own infrastructure, with patching and updates and machine changes. So the requirement is to have a Cyber Essentials Plus, which aligns to the basic, which is the scope we're looking at. And anything more than 90 days, it might have changed significantly. Generally, the process, it can be as quick as only a few days, but typically we find if you started this from scratch, and you've never done an assessment like this before, probably 4 to 9 weeks is a sensible timescale to complete all of the self-assessment things and put any policies and processes in place and make sure the staff understand them and any colleagues that are working on the systems understand them. Make sure the IT is in the setup and the secure configuration that you really need to make sure that you've got it in a safe environment, and then finally complete the accreditation. So we generally see between 4 to 9 weeks is a good time span to get this completed. Thank you.
So thanks very much for listening. It's a short overview of what Cyber Essentials Plus is all about. So I'm going to open the floor up to any questions you may have around the Cyber Essentials, the certification piece, how we can possibly help you. Have you got any questions there, Jared?
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, so let me pull up if everybody can see, there should be a question and answer option on your Zoom screen. So if you guys want to fill out any of those, I'll send them right to you, Ian. Let's see, we've got some coming in. Let me send you some. So for the accreditation, is it necessary to get the plus, or can they get the basic and still prevent most cyber attacks?
We would recommend the plus because it's that additional layer of security. It's the assessment, it's a version of a penetration test. The basic is good to put the controls in place about the process and understanding what you've got in your environment. The plus is definitely what we would recommend because of the layers of security you put in. And as Clive said, the verification from an independent auditor is what these insurers are asking for now. Suppliers are now asking, or your customers will start asking questions and sending you security questionnaires. If you've got this Cyber Essentials Plus in place, those kind of questionnaires disappear. It's the level of assurance that you can give to everyone within your sort of workspace around how secure you are as an organization.
Okay.
I think the other thing with that, Ian, as well is very often as an organization, we think that we've got these things in place and we think that they're being used. That external audit sometimes picks up things that are just not quite as you thought. So it really does ensure that the cyber security is set up as you believe.
There's another question that's come in here. I think this is for you, Clive. It's what's the overall cost?
The overall cost. It actually varies now. We can circulate the cost, but the NCSC changed it this year, so it depends on the size of the organisation. But for Cyber Essentials all the way through, you know, it can vary depending on the size of the organisation. So, Ian, I don't know whether it's better to share the actual cost information via a slide, maybe when we share out the slide deck.
Yes, certainly, we'll definitely do that. Any other questions, Jared?
We just had one about, is this going to be, are they going to receive a copy? And yes, we will send you all a recording of the webinar and a follow-up email, so look forward to that.
By all means, if anyone wants to reach out after this to myself or Clive, our contact details will be in the slides as well. Do get in touch. We can help you with this journey. It's not as difficult, as complex as it sounds. It's just understanding what you've got in your environment. So we're here to help you through that. Clive and his team are fantastic at helping out organizations to get to that level of assurance. So it's a good journey to be on, and it makes your life easy in the long run, because once you've embedded these processes and controls and you know what's in your environment, the next audit's even easier. And you can secure your data. And a lot of the things we've seen in terms of these malware attacks and these ransomware attacks coming in would have all been prevented by some basic controls, which are all built into the Cyber Essentials Plus certification.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Ian. Thank you, Clive, both for your time today, sharing with our guests some more information on the Cyber Essentials Plus accreditation. As Ian mentioned, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. We'll be sending a follow-up email with a recording of this and some contact information for both. So thank you everyone for attending today, and have a great day.
Thank you.